Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Mary Ann Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code SLAM the Gavel for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. Again, go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to get a case reopened. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. I have return guests on. I have good friends on, Mark and Terri Stemann. They're founders of Let Our Children Go. They're going to give us updates to their case. The last time they were on season 4, episode 47, 70, and 97. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. Also that they were in my newly released book, Raised by These Wolves, How Federal and Family Courts Are Failing Our Children. We're going to talk about judges and their dereliction of duty and the alienation aspect of how the government inserts themselves within the parent-child relationship and the effect on the kids, and how there's a break in parental authority. So I totally welcome you both, Mark and Terri. How are you?
Hi, Marianne. Thanks for having us back on the show. We're glad to be here with you and your audience.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Ann, and congratulations to you on the release of your latest book, Raised by These Wolves, and hope it's getting out there and people are getting wind of things that are happening within our system and people's stories, because there's a lot of stories that still yet need to be told, and
Oh, yes.
we're so grateful that you dedicate yourself to this cause and your podcast on Slam the Gavel. And so we're looking forward to an exciting conversation today. So thank you for having us on.
Oh, well, thank you. And, so you have some updates to your case. There's elements of fraud. What happened there?
Yeah, well, in respect to the update on our situation, as people may know from our previous appearances on your show, we had our 7 children kidnapped under the color of law from us in 2016. And they have been holding our children hostage. Now we've been in this for 7.5 years. Just a quick review. We discovered a child trafficking ring operating within Jefferson County in Louisville, Kentucky, and we have thousands of pages of evidence to show the picture, to prove it. And we pursued an avenue for justice and remedy through our all state and federal law enforcement agencies, and yet we've been denied and turned away everywhere we've been. And we were actively seeking an attorney all across the country who could reach out or could help us in respect to filing a suit. And we were getting a lot of different things as far as reasons why they couldn't help us, from the immunity reasons, which are not lawful. There's a federal law or constitution that actually prohibits immunity. It's a right that we the people possess, and then a variety of other reasons. And yet now we finally have maybe broken through that door in respect to that blockade, and we have been able to connect with counsel, an attorney who is taking a look into our case. And so we may have an opportunity to get something in the federal, to pursue a federal action that may have potentially the benefit to the benefit of not just ourselves, but to be a precedent-setting situation that may bring that could potentially bring relief for a lot of other people. So we're going to see how that unfolds. There's still a lot of obstacles that we have to overcome, a lot of things we have to work through, but it is a sign of hope. And then with respect to our children, even though we have three of our seven children, our oldest girls have aged out. We have not been able to reclaim them as far as connecting with them and bringing them back into our family unit. They are not really very responsive. And then our three younger ones are still being held hostage, by the criminals who facilitated this scheme. The good news is that we have been able to connect with our son Noah. So he is now with us, and he is healing. This is a process, but we're just really encouraged that Noah was able to remember a lot of his upbringing, that we had a joyful, happy, loving home, and that really kind of lent itself to reclaiming that connection. And then really after he was, when he was kidnapped from us, Marianne, he actually kind of, even though he went through a very, very hard, difficult time and what they subjected him to, when he did reach the point of aging out, he was able to kind of escape the environment in which he and many of his other brothers and sisters were being abused, and truly being abused and harmed. And so we think that because he was able to escape that to some extent, that kind of aided in our ability to reconnect with him. And so he feels really good about where he is right now, and we're just really excited, and we're hopeful that the others will eventually come back to us too. So that's kind of the short end of it as far as a review of a little bit about our story, and then where we are right now. So we have some opportunities. Then in addition to that, we can talk a little bit more about this toward the end if we can get to it. But in respect to our Let Our Children Go mission, we have more people becoming involved in our organization, and we have some active operations in several states where we are taking this to the streets basically, and reaching people who might not otherwise know really what's going on. And so with the shows that we've been doing, like yours and others, we're able, for those people that we can't connect with in that regards, we become aware. They can go and look at not just our story, but other people's stories. And so that's where all these things kind of tie together. And we can talk more about that, and kind of how we can, bring that more into even more cohesion here in a little bit. But so that's a little bit of a quick update. And I know we have some other topics we're going to cover. So that's where we're at right now. So we're thankful to be with you again today.
Oh, I'm so glad that you did, come on. I was going to ask you, when you found this child trafficking ring in Louisville, Kentucky, was it Jefferson County? Is that what?
Yeah, that's right. And it was in Jefferson County, Kentucky, which encompasses the Louisville area. And the significance of that is that the Jefferson County Family Court System, on the court website, they had a statement that they were that they are a self-acclaimed national model. And so we feel like we uncovered there. And then with the evidence that we have going back several years, it's been an ongoing thing. And this is where it kind of ties into the whole fraudulent aspects. Your question there a few minutes ago was about the fraud. And just real quick, in respect to people, just so that they have a deeper knowledge in respect to the whole CPS operation, these things that are being done are happening to families under a disguise of safety and best interest. And where the fraudulent aspect arises is, this is a question we ask of people who come on our show. We have a weekly show on rumble.com, and just do a search for Let Our Children Go, and you'll be able to find that real quickly. But one of the questions we asked people was, have you been charged or convicted of a crime? And just about every one of them, or most of them, most families are not charged with a crime, let alone convicted of one, in respect to child welfare. Mm-hmm. And then the next question would be, well, have you ever entered into a contract with anyone in government for the welfare of your children? And just about every answer is no, we have not. And so being that we haven't constituted that, it is a power of government to act against us in a civil capacity or a civil proceeding, and that there's no charge of a crime or a conviction of one, then there's no legitimate basis for these actions to be taken to have CPS show up and they walk off with your kids on an allegation. That's what makes it fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second element, which is a fraud within the fraud, is another question we ask people is, well, did you have were your relatives notified of when your child was removed? And they are required under the ASFA, the Adoption and Safe Families Act. It's in Title 42, Chapter 7, and I can look up the exact reference here in a few minutes. But it requires the state agency to notify all adult relatives of the child that is being removed, and that's not being done. And so the ASFA makes that a requirement for states to receive the Title IV funding. That is a mandatory provision that they have to follow. And yet that they're not following it shows that they're being fraudulent and that they're not complying with that part of it. And then, of course, they get away with it because, well, they have all these other controls that are unlawful, like the immunities and other things. And so this is a huge problem because it's the American people who are paying the money for this. Government doesn't raise, I mean, we fund the government. Okay, this is our money being used to this, and so these are criminal matters. Fraud is a serious crime, and then when you're not following the provisions of the ASFA, it's even more egregious because the adult relatives of children who are being removed, even in the fraudulent capacity, or the pseudo operation I'm talking about here, they're not even being given consideration to care for the children. And we know why. We've talked about that in previous shows with you in respect to the foster placement, the big Title IV money. So it is a fraudulent operation. It's evil, it's dark, and it's all being done by a disguise as the light. But it's really, really very, very sinister and seductive in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's just one of the major components.
Yeah, because it's disguised under the light of, oh, we're going to help you, and don't worry, we'll reunite you with your kids later, like
Right.
when you're 60, maybe. Seriously.
Yeah. And then once they get a hold of the kids, they brainwash them,
Right.
indoctrinate them. They'll turn them into weapons. They conduct a psychological warfare, not just on the parents in respect to what they do to the family, and then the extended family, but especially among the children. I know that was going to be one of the things that Terri wanted to talk about, but I don't know, do we want to get into that now, or while we're on
Sure.
that, or do you want to talk a little
Sure.
bit about?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up what goes on when the government steps in and takes authority, what that does in the mind of the child. I think that it's not talked about a lot, but it is a major part of the problem with this system. And so, I just want families out there that are dealing with this to know that they're not alone in those heartaches that they experience with that situation. And part one of our 3-part mission at Let Our Children Go is restoration of the family. And so that involves, once you are able to reconnect with your child and breaking through those barriers that have been put up because of the government overreach into the family. And like you said, at the start of the show, Marianne, the disregard for parental authority and what that does in the mind of the child, and whatever else the child is being exposed to, language, what may be being said to them, and these therapy sessions that they may be put in. There was a really atrocious case that came out of, I can't remember what country it was. It may have been Italy. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was a case a few years ago that came out where some government officials were getting into, I think it was the mayor of a place, but it was basically about taking children and brainwashing them with like I don't know if they were using some kind of a shock treatment on them, but yeah. So I mean, we don't even know what these children are really being exposed to, and some through some of these organizations that are involved with this system. You know, there's a really popular, I think it's becoming popular therapy out there now called, it has something to do with your eyes. Have you heard about this? EDM or something about flashing something in your eyes, and it's supposed to help, like if you have traumatic memories, I think it's supposed to help with sort of like blocking out those memories.
Mhm.
And so a therapy like that, it could be used for useful purposes to help somebody to heal and to overcome maybe past traumas. But how else might they be using that on
Right.
children that they say, you know, that they say have been traumatized? And then, you know, what kind of ways could they be messing with children's minds and these therapies that they maybe get put in? And you know, it's just, I just wanted to touch on it because I don't think it gets talked about a lot, but I want families out there to know that deal with this type of um, situation where their children have been removed from them. And I wonder if it affects children, especially that maybe were in their teenage years, you know, sort of like that rebellious stage that kids go through, you know, when they're growing up and, you know, they're sort of trying to come into their own and be more independent. And, you know, they still are under their parent, you know, living in their parents' house with this parental authority. And so if CPS, you know, or the government comes in at that point, and then, you know, what kind of conflict that may create in their minds. And so I just wanted to touch on that and maybe get your thoughts on that some. I know we had talked some about Dr. Jennifer Jill Harmon, and I was looking at some stuff with Dr. Richard Childress, and a lot of that, it seems like they focus on the parental alienation issue that goes on in maybe high conflict divorce cases, but it's sort of the same type of situation. I feel like in a little bit, you know, where you've maybe got a child living with another parent or with foster parents. And so, I mean, I think sometimes, you know, people sort of maybe refer to like the Stockholm syndrome or like, you know, so it's an issue. It's an issue, and it really affects the progress that I think families can make once they are able to reconnect with their children. And that may not be until they're, you know, 18 or older to where they can reach back out to them. And then that barrier that's there and how people can deal with that and move forward with their relationship with their children, you know.
Well, I know one of the stories in my book, towards the end of the book, it was Matt and Heidi Weber, the story that I covered. CPS came into their home and removed an almost 18, going to be 18. Like within 3 months, this child would have been 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based on a false accusation, of course. And the caseworker said to the 17-year-old in the home as they were leaving, don't talk to your mother. If you want to say something to her, you have to go through me, something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already alienation starting right there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I just feel so bad for their story because once something like that happens, it's hard to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
These you know, the caseworker represents authority, even though they might not even have a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they have to do is totally abolish CPS, put something in its place. And I'm sorry, but we're going to have to pay these people more because they're going to have master's degrees in child psychological abuse and, of course, all the other abuses. But they have to recognize when there are false allegations, and what 76, 78% of them are false allegations, or I even heard 88% are false allegations. So we're wasting taxpayers' dollars with these people calling it false allegations when there should be, and I don't know, someone else had said this, I'm not making this up, but there should be a registry for people that continuously make false allegations and accusations on parents for whatever reason. There should be a registry. Oh, it's so and so calling again, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Mary Ann, I just to kind of add on to what you said there, I think the ones who should determine that are the police.
Mm-hmm.
Being that we're just talking about child abuse and neglect is a crime, and in Pennsylvania, if anyone wants to do a search on Pennsylvania law, it's in Title 18, Chapter 43, Section 4304. You can look it up. And we were just doing a series for some families on our show over on Rumble in respect to families, and there were some who were actually being charged with a crime. But what we were discovering was another aspect of the fraudulent activity within what they're doing, in addition to the other elements we just talked about. And such a thing as this is that they will act or give it the appearance of some sort of legitimate due process. So there will be, the process of like, well, a charge of a crime, but they never proceed to the point of actual trial, where they will come back and they'll say, well, we're gonna negotiate a plea deal. So they'll put the parents in a hard position, like as a condition to get their children back. If they just basically plead that yeah, well, I went ahead and did this, which really creates a bigger problem for the parents,
Mm-hmm.
because they're holding that over their head. And then where the additional Title IV funding comes in is that when parents are arrested pursuant to this kind of a process, then it opens up an additional revenue stream under the Title IV funding. There's a grant money that flows out to the states for children of incarcerated parents, which is where, like in our story, they put me in jail, and pursuant to our investigation, we wanted to know if that opened up that revenue stream. And we know with many other families where one or both parents will be put in jail, that opens up that additional revenue stream, for the money acquisition, and then where's that money going to laundering. But so then what happens is that they're just fabricating, I guess, the charge, or whatever, and the parents don't really ever see what the nature of it. They never proceed to trial. There really isn't any sharing of information or discovery, and then they either get them to a point of a plea deal, or they will dismiss the case. And so all during that time, though, this could go on for several years. So they're still getting that Title IV money. And then even in dismissing the criminal aspect, some parents do get their children back, and then others don't. They'll still run the whole CPS, the other CPS aspect of it, of the family court and services and all of that stuff, and then to the actual adopting out of the kids in some cases. And so it really opened our eyes when we did the Pennsylvania series, because we could see people that were making known the whole other part of a fraudulent aspect that we weren't really even aware of, that's we're now discovering is happening even in other states too. And so, it's a huge, disgusting disguise of what they're doing. And, it's like when these things happen, and as say children who get or parents who do get their children back, do the American people get their Title IV money back? Like you were saying, in respect to like an unsubstantiated claim. Well, we have all of these things going on where money's, flying out the doors. But where's the return on what the American people are paying for that? And then the security, like even if parents do get their children back, do they ever really get their security back?
No, because CPS has come back into their lives again, even a couple months later or a year later.
That's right. And, you highlighted a family who's actually part of our Let Our Children Go team, Reggie and Tamsin Bowles, in your book. And they were subject to that very thing. And, you know, when you go through it once, it's traumatic enough, but then they have to go through it a second time or even more. I mean, and then, you know, so what kind of a security do you have as a family? You know, that if I go to a doctor and I don't want to get this procedure for my child, or something that they want to do, are they just going to, you know, call these people and they're going to come and, you know, take my kid? You know, it's like, so it's a real problem because the system, by people who have agendas, whether they're political, they're medical, educational, whatever they may be, or they just have animosity towards you or your family. They don't like a family member. They don't like a father. They don't like your, you know, the mother. They'll use the system as a weapon. And then we have no protections because our system of government is not upholding the very charter that we established at our founding, which was upholding our rights. And you know, we were talking a little bit earlier about, you know, you mentioned someone to us about someone who was doing something in respect to making people aware of, well, do your job. You know,
Yeah.
these people doing their job, and you know, we talked a little bit about our prospects in respect to maybe doing something, you know, through a suit. But you know, even with that, it's like even if you finally find a good attorney, you're still, like in your case, Marianne, you already know what happens in some federal court situations and many other stories you highlighted in your book.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a good judge, and then, you know, that judge is going to dismiss it, or are they going to find some reason to wiggle their way out of it? It's like, so you got to get a good judge, and then what happens in the process of appeal? So, and then there's all the money that goes into it. Like, well, you need to keep coming up with the money, and many of these families are financially devastated, and so it's like, how do you make that happen? You know, it's a huge challenge, and so, in respect to like do your job, I mean, that goes beyond more than just like the judicial system. But one of the key things in respect to do your job, the main charter of our judges can be found in Article 6, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. That the U.S. Constitution is supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state are to be bound thereby. They're to be bound to that. That's their main thing. You know, when we were going through our family court process, we were standing on our rights, and we were basically just grossly disregarded for every motion we filed in respect to our rights. No respect or regard for our rights. And so, you know, these are actual crimes. The deprivation of rights is a federal crime. U.S. Code Title 18, Section Chapter 13, 241, 242. We talked about that, and I think it was our second or maybe our third show with you. But so, you know, where there's no protections, then, and they're not doing their job, well, they're engaging in malfeasance and dereliction. And, you know, the other thing that we entrust our government with is to prosecute a crime. Whether it's crimes, these people are committing crimes against people, kidnapping and fraud and other crimes. You know, there is to be remedy and justice. And that's a right we possess under another federal law that we mentioned. For any new viewers who may be watching this show, they can look it up themselves. Is U.S. Code Title 42, Chapter 21, Section 1981, or you can find it at h3fc.com on our Heritage and Freedom Coalition website, and the All Points Bulletin. It's right there. So there is no immunity in the United States of America, even though what they've been doing is enacting immunity laws, and all 50 states have them, which are color of law deprivations of our rights that are unalienable. And all those people need to be held accountable. So we can talk about the accountability here in a minute, but beyond just the judicial system, you know, our judicial system was formed to effect justice and remedy for the people. And, you know, one of the most disheartening, and I think just it's something that's just really not right, is that, look, we file suits in courts because we want a decision, right? Mm-hmm. We want justice. And I just don't understand how we've allowed ourselves to let these people take upon themselves to just arbitrarily dismiss things without giving a legitimate reason as to why they're being dismissed. I mean, we file something, we want a decision, we want a ruling on something, right? And then the other thing we've been talking a little bit about is the statute of limitations. Just about every state constitution and the federal law that I just mentioned, the 1981, so that we have a right to justice and remedy. Well, with that, when you look at some of these statute of limitations in respect to crimes, is that constitutional? Because if we have a right to justice and remedy, how can we tolerate or allow the enactment of laws that are going to deprive us of a right to justice and remedy? I mean, our rights are not time limited. The state constitutions, like in Kentucky and one story we just covered in Texas, have a statement in their constitution. I think it's section 29 in Kentucky and maybe it's section 26 in Texas are very similar in language. It says that any laws contrary to the state constitution are void.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have those things in place, you can just see just how we can talk about corruption, but when you're denied the protections of your laws, that even rises to the level of a seditious conspiracy. And when you got all 50 states that are enacting laws where they're saying, these people are immune from civil or criminal liability, that's a seditious operation. Those are all indicators of a sedition going on in our country by bad actors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about do your job. Well, the judiciary isn't doing their job. And if the executive branches are not doing their job in respect to investigating and prosecuting a crime, then we go to our legislature. And this is what the Let Children Go mission is really focused on right now, is building a local action network so that we can go before our representatives with the power of the people that we are all endowed with by nature of our citizenship here in the United States of America and in our respective states. Individually, Marianne, and I'm sure you've highlighted this in respect to the people you've had on your show, but people will go and they'll go to their governor, they'll go to a representative by themselves, and they get led along where they're led to think that, well, maybe we'll get something for it. And then they just get disregarded and dismissed, and they don't get any action. And we need to be applying the pressure on these people, because in our legislature, that is the heart of our state and federal form of government. And they have the power of impeachment and removal. And we need to hold their feet to the fire for them to uphold that, to do that. Because if we don't have people who are going to prosecute crimes, well, we shouldn't be letting governors sit in positions of where they're being malfeasant and derelict to their duty if they're not going to prosecute a crime. We should not be letting judges sit in these positions where they need to be impeached and removed. The Constitution said that they should retain their positions for good behavior, but it's a good behavior if they're denying you your rights. That's not good behavior.
Also, sorry.
Go ahead. No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was court watching, and down there in Kentucky, Louisville, they've got really bad problems. There was a judge, he just would blow off motions. I was watching two cases, in the same two cases, he just would not answer the motions. He just kind of, we'll address this at some other time. Constantly. I reported him on both cases. However, I didn't know the one attorney's name ahead of the other case I was watching too. But he just wouldn't do it. So what does he do? I mean, that's your job, is to address motions and rule on them. Not doing the job.
Yeah, that's right. We had the similar things happen to us when we were filing motions, when we were just trying to reclaim our children at the beginning, until we actually discovered all of the bad actors and what they were really doing with respect to the trafficking ring that was operating there. But the attorneys that we had, the court appointed attorneys, they wouldn't file motions. And then we had to get rid of them so we could file the motions. And then even after we did file the motions, it was just, I deny it without giving any reason. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And actually in committing a crime and depriving us of the protections of our rights. And so for the accountability is going to happen if we, the people, apply the pressure of the power that we all possess. Now, individually, our lives are going to burn pretty dimly, but if we can all get plugged in together, and we have a vision and a strategy, and we've already gotten it started as far as how to make that happen. But together, we put our power together with a common objective, we can become powerful and affect the change that we want to see. and when they see the people out there outside their local offices, people talk about going to DC, that costs a lot of money. And we can see what goes on in DC in respect to what happened with the J6ers, a couple years ago.
Yeah,
And
I'm not going there.
So, but your local action, all of our state and federal representatives and senators all have offices pretty close to where we all reside. And so part of the local action network is if we can build, the networks, and anyone out there who wants to connect with us, who've been on the show or who you may have on the show in the future, reach out to us and connect, and we can talk about strategies and tactics that can be done and always peaceful, pursuant to the free exercise of our constitutional rights to affect the change. Because we feel that with everything else that's been tried, not just by ourselves, because we have a ton of evidence in respect to crimes, the derelictions that are happening. We need to apply the pressure on our officials to investigate, impeach, congressional inquiries, legislatures in our states, and then remove. And then beyond that, we can also exercise we the people power with recall, wherever we can sign petitions for recall and have these people, that are sitting in these positions recalled, and then have another special election. So there's all kinds of other things that can be done that we can do. It's just a question of, are we willing to do that and take those steps out? Because, there's a lot of terror, there's a lot of fear, but if we can overcome some of that by just connecting with people, you might make a friend, and you can get a movement that moves. And because, part of our mission, Mary, is we don't want to be sitting out here 5 years from now, talking to more and more families, because you might get your kids back. You may not get your securities back. Most likely you won't get your kids back. And then once those kids age out, are they going to come back to you? Are your kids going to come back to you? Who knows where they're going to be? What? And then they're going to go after their kids because they have been flagged in the system. We've already seen stories like that. And then with the incentives that we talked about in other shows, they have to keep taking more kids. And so, while we want to help families get their children back, we want to address the root cause of the problem and put a stop to it, so we can all have our securities returned to us and reclaim a properly functioning form of government. We, the people, possess that power. That's what the founders and the framers of our constitutions and our respective states gave us. And are we going to be derelict to our duty as a people, the same way that these people are hurting us and many other families? Or are we going to take the step out and say, no, I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm going to be the home of the brave, so we can be the land of the free. And so, we have to maintain those accountabilities, but it's up to us to do it when everything else fails. And that's kind of where we're at with it, and why we're intensely pursuing that, because we feel that that's where the solution is going to happen for us and for many other people, to put a stop to it.
And I think a lot of parents are either exhausted as well, emotionally, physically. I mean, the CPS has caused people to lose their jobs and destroyed their lives and careers. So a lot of people are afraid to speak out, and I wish they would speak out. That's what I'm here for. That's what you're here for, is to get people to speak out and address the root cause.
Yeah, well, people are hurting, and we understand that pain. And but you can turn a really bad situation into something good. It's just a life choice that you make. And everybody has a gift or talent. You're exercising yours and what you do with your podcast, and that's great, because it's a piece among many other pieces that together, that we can all work together to share the information. But we can't just have too much of one thing. Everybody has different gifts and talents. People can do different things, but can we all get together and work toward the common objective is to put a stop to this? One of the other things, Marianne, is that once they get a hold of kids, what we're seeing is that they are putting them through a form of, well, not just medical experimentation, the drugging and all that other stuff that we and other people have talked about, but they're re-educating our children in the tenets of communism. And just this construct in and of itself is communistic in nature. When you think about an authoritarian form of government or government action that gives you no rights, that can invade your home and your livelihood with no due process of law or any protections, take your money, take your children, destroy your livelihood, and then basically give your kids out to other people, and then redistribute and launder your money, taxation without representation. That is a form of communism. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
that is communism. And so if our children are going to be conditioned to that, and parents are going to be conditioned to that, are we going to become a communist country under the red, white, and blue, just de facto style? Is that what we're going to let happen? Is that what we want to leave our posterity? Do you want to live under that? I mean, and then, we talk about adult protective services, and it's like, do you want your children making decisions for you with that kind of mentality when you reach your older years? So, while we have the ability, we have the knowledge, we have the authority, we have the law on our side. It's just a matter of the will. And so, we are seeing some things beginning to roll, and we're excited about where it's going. And we know that we can get there from here. And other people are beginning to get on board with that. So we're excited that we can bring this to an end. And so, we just invite people to reach out to us. You can reach out to us through our websites at letourchildrengo.org or at letourchildrengo@protonmail.com if you'd like to talk more about it. And so that's just a little bit about, about doing your job, and the fact that people in these agencies are not doing their job. And we need to hold them accountable, because we, the people, are the ones who run our country. Our government they are our employees.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start treating them like our employees, and exercising the power that we, the people, were given by our founders and our state and federal constitutions.
I agree. The thing is, we're dealing with, as far as CPS, from what I've dealt with and the people I have interviewed, is we're dealing with a bunch of inept caseworkers that think they can just barge into a person's home and just take their kid, whether it's a false accusation. This is an absolute criminal behavior to do to a child. They have to be held accountable. I think they should just be abolished. And people say, well, something has to be in their place. Well, and like you said, if Johnny's getting beat up down the road, then you call the police. But then you've got to place that child somewhere if he's being physically abused. So we need something in its place with a higher intelligence and maybe a weight limit that will help families instead of further destroy the relationship and bonds parents have with their children.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is we need to, take a look at the relatives. I mean, there's a lot of relatives out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like, and then if there isn't, then maybe you could look at maybe like incentives for maybe religious-based organizations and things like that. But, like the monetary incentive right now is all driven toward the dissolution of the family unit, toward there being no relative placement. And, part of maybe some sort of a corrective action would be, well, what about in the case of a criminal conviction, that maybe for a temporary time, there could be the monetary incentive toward a relative placement with relatives. And then beyond that, if there are no relatives, and that would be a very rare situation, then maybe with, vouchers for like religious organizations or something to be foster providers. And then, going down the line, if there are those extreme and rare situations beyond that, but that, there is so many other better options, I think, that we can affect as far as, but like you said, right now, what's happening is you got CPS people acting like they're the police. They're using the police to facilitate this action. And, the other thing that we want to bring to the table is, pursuant to the actual corrective action, we want to try to work to prevent this from happening to anyone else. like if people show up at your door and they want you to do this or whatever, and you got to know your rights and exercise them. But, if these people are going to run this operation until we can fix it, we need to have community action groups who are going, like we have neighborhood watch groups for criminals, we also need to have neighborhood watch groups for criminals in uniform. Okay. And within our system, and it's like we have a right to show up and ask questions about what's going on. And just because someone may be, you may be living on a street, you may be seeing, police or, social workers show up at someone's house. There's nothing wrong with maybe asking some questions like, is it pursuant to a crime or what's going on here? And then, and we need to raise our voices in that regard because, we have a right to that because if they're out there committing a crime, well, we need to take it upon ourselves. First of all, because you might be the one truly protecting a child. Because where's that child going to go? They're going to be put in a truly abusive situation, a child trafficking ring. Are they going to be, drugged against their will? Or are they going to be sexually molested? There are all kinds of things that you could be potentially protecting a child from. And so pursuant to the corrective action and, not to interfere with police action, we don't want to do that, but, their actions should only be legitimate if they're to investigate a crime. And then just because someone commits a crime does not mean that they should lose their rights. I mean, government doesn't have the power to terminate our rights. This is another thing we've heard people say, well, they terminate my rights. They don't have the power to terminate rights. Rights cannot be terminated by our system of government. We never gave anyone in our government the authority to terminate our rights. And our Declaration of Independence, it very clearly says that governments were instituted to secure our rights. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, which is what they're doing by terminating rights, then we, the people, have to fix it. We have the power to fix it. We're actually told in the Declaration we have a duty to fix that. And so then, are we going to be derelict to that trust, to that code that they gave us? No, we're not. That's not what we're going to do. And other people now are going to begin stepping up. And because, like I said, this seduction is driven by a seductive spirit. People begin to adopt the lie, believe the lie, and promote the lie. And we're working to unravel the lie by exposing the lie and then working to correct the lie. And this is not in the best interest or safety of any child, of any parent, of any family, or of our country. And so, we can do this. We can get it done. And so, there's all kinds of things we can do. It's just a matter of the will of the people. And,
Well, I like your idea of the community watch groups and just keeping your eye out for things like that. Because I know if I saw that, I would stick my nose in, and then I would probably give that parent cpsprotect.com's phone number because he does great work and I've seen it. So because you've got to be one step ahead of these individuals.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the additional thing I wanted to say, and that was just because someone may be convicted of a crime, I mean, should they be forever punished, or can we work toward reconciliation? And, that's where the services, that we talk about, that CPS wants to levy upon parents, would come in play. And that would be constitutional under the 13th Amendment. If they've been convicted of a crime, then they can be subject to involuntary actions pursuant to their sentence, or, if either being put in jail for a while, then, when they come out, they go through the services. That's really the only way that whole sequence of things really works in respect to maybe doing, psychological evaluation, your family counseling, your anger management, any of those things that pursuant to the conviction of a crime, that is part of a remediation, debt to society, and then reconciliation to eventually reclaim possession of your children is an option. I just don't, I just don't feel that we should just be eternally punishing people, or like the egregious ways they're doing it now by, levying a penalty upon parents by taking their most treasured possession, which is their children, on just an allegation in closed courts with there's mostly no jury trials or oversight by the people, and to the exercise of an authority that we the people did not give them to terminating their rights and adopting out their kids. I mean, it's just very traumatic on a child. I mean, think about when we were kids. I mean, your security was your home with your mom and dad. That was probably, I mean, that's the basic security for a child. And they rip a young child out, no matter what their age. Very traumatic, as Terri has mentioned. And so, this is very harmful, not just to individual families, because all of that is ultimately what will play out within our society. And so we're creating our own pain in society by the seeds that we're sowing now. What you sow, you will eventually reap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something else that we need to consider in respect of what kind of a society do we want to live in.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, time really flies.
It really did. Boy, that went quick. But
So,
I like
did you
to
have anything else that you wanted to cover here with us? Any questions? Because one thing we'd like to ask you, Mary Ann, maybe while you're thinking about that, is like, what kind of things do you think that we need to do? I know that you were talking about having a better system, but one of the questions we're going to start raising is we want people to give us your insight. I mean, all these other things that people have tried. What else can we do? Because this thing cannot continue to exist as it is right now, because it's hurting parents, children in our country. So what else do you think needs to be done?
It's the false allegations that have got to stop. They have to do. I had a guest on previously that brought up, the registry for people that make false allegations, and they should be penalized, because if they have called in the third allegation, then they should be served a $1,000 fine. I mean, because they just keep calling them in. There was one gentleman that had 48 false allegations called in on him, and they were all unfounded. So that's an abuse of taxpayer dollars. So, we've got to have better caseworkers that are more educated, that can pick up on these personality disorders, instead of just jump the gun and just go to someone's house and create havoc in someone's life. And also, if there is, say, a custody battle going on and there's a false allegation, they should not be getting involved, because this always happens during a custody battle. Is, one side starts calling false allegations that turn into indications and then become unfounded, and it's a big waste of taxpayer dollars.
Right. Yeah. So, just kind of in summary, we don't live under a one branch system of government.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the founders gave us 3 branches for a reason, and the heart of our republic, and that's what we have. We live in a constitutional republic. That's what they gave us. Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution very clearly says that. Mm-hmm. And these people work for us, and so let us get serious and stand up and be brave, mm-hmm. and make them do their jobs, make them aware of what their job is, and then require it of them. And if they can't bring themselves to do it, then ask them to resign. Mm-hmm. We have the authority to ask them to resign, right?
Right.
So, in the Declaration of Independence, Mary Ann, it says that our form of government, that the people within our system receive their just powers by the consent of the governed. And, with everything that we've talked about here today with you and on other shows, and maybe what other people are brought up in their shows, do you, Mr. and Mrs. America, consent to this and what we're talking about? Do you consent to what they're doing to the harm of children and parents and families? Because if you don't, then are you going to do something? If you don't consent, silence and inaction is a form of consent. And you're abetting a domestic enemy to ultimately the destruction of our country, because an old Soviet communist leader years ago, Lenin, said, destroy the family, destroy the country.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so if we allow the continued destruction of the family and our children, then our country is going to be destroyed eventually, unless we stop it.
Yeah. And they're doing this from the inside out. They're using our children and our families to unravel this nation.
That's right. So did you have any any other comments? So doesn't look like Terri has anything else that she wants to add into this, but
I'm just so angered and discouraged by this whole system that trying to come up with a solution.
Well, it can be oppressive and discouraging, but what we want to leave people with is that we have a really good positive thing beginning to happen and beginning to expand out across the country. And we just invite people to connect with us, and we can give you more information on becoming a part of that. And we feel very good about the vision and what's happening, and to bring about that change. The Heart of a Republic is our representatives, and they work for us, and we need to make them aware of that with the power of the people right where we are. And we have a plan of action and some tactics that we're using, and always peaceful. Of course, we don't advocate violence. We don't advocate any kind of insurrection. Right? We just want to exercise our First Amendment right to peaceably assemble and to petition our government for a redress of grievances and get an answer. We want an answer. We want the corrective action. And we, the people, have the power, and we're going to use it. So, Marianne, we really appreciate you, hosting us again for another great show. And we just want everyone to know that we can get there from here if we want to. And we're all in for this, and other people are coming in too. And so thank you again for letting us share all this information with people, and for having us on your show again today.
And you'll be back. You're coming back whether you like it or not.
Well, that'd be great. We'd love to.
If anybody wants to reach out to us, please do. We're also on social sites. You can look for us under Let Our Children Go with the Daisy Flower logo. And we put out different information there. It's another way for people to be able to share that want to help get the information out, because we do need to get the information out, because like you said, I think Marianne earlier, they operate behind this disguise. It's like the storefront that it seems like things are going on one way, but what's really going on, in the back there. And so it's breaking down that narrative that they've been able to build up over the years. But there's plenty of evidence out there that this system is harmful to families and to children. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do is to try to put that information out there to people can use that to help educate their friends and their family, to get people more aware of what's going on, so that some of these judges or attorneys or people that work in the system can that maybe aren't aware of some of the things that are going on, can become aware, and then they too can stand up and become whistleblowers, or speak up and help to bring an end to it. It's just like the issue of slavery. There it may seem impossible, but if we just keep stepping out in faith and doing the next thing, and doing what we know is right for the families and the children, we just have to keep doing that and moving forward. And so we encourage people to reach out to us and to know that they're not alone, that if they don't feel comfortable doing an interview and going on camera, there's other ways that they can participate and help to raise awareness and bring it into the situation. They don't have to do an interview. So please reach out to us, and let's get connected.
Most definitely. Well, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and newly released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. Please join us again with Mark and Terri Stemann in the future for another exciting episode. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to donate to Buy Me a Coffee to help support this podcast. So I thank you again, Mark and Terri.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.